When you think of Hustler magazine, what comes to mind? Most likely the answer is naked women. You probably wouldn't think of this in particular magazine as an alternative news source or a platform for free speech. But over the years, Hustler magazine has made a name for itself in the realm of erotica, but also in pushing the limits when it comes to First Amendment rights. Between the pages of adult entertainment, real substance has, in the past, made its way into the magazine. The December issue of the magazine features an article co-authored by Thom Hartmann, the host of The Big Picture here on RT, as well as Big Picture producer Sam Sachs. It's called Who Shot Santa, and it speaks about the incentive system Democrats have set up to earn public support and how Republicans are attempting to sabotage that strategy. Here now to explain more about this article, as well as their decision to have it published in Hustler magazine, Thom Hartmann and Sam Sachs.
Hello.
Welcome, gentlemen. So first off, let's go ahead and address that question. What made you want to publish it in a magazine that is well known for being an adult entertainment magazine?
Yeah, we both write a lot of things for publications like Alternet and Truth Out, and been published in other large venues that generally are not read by Joe Sixpack. And Hustler magazine, if you want to reach middle America, if you want to reach the average middle class, Joe Sixpack guy out there, Hustler's one of the best places to do it. And Larry Flynt has been fighting a progressive fight, I mean, for a long, long time. In 1988, he took it all the way to the Supreme Court and won in a case, when Jerry Falwell sued him. So there's several men's magazines that have been out in front in that arena for a lot of years. This is one of them.
So how did you come about coming with this article in particular for this magazine in particular? Were you approached by him, or does he approach you guys with this idea?
Well, I had written an article about the two Santa Claus theory, Judah Wanniski's two Santa Claus theory, a number of years ago. And the folks at Hustler, I've written for them a couple of times. They've excerpted from a couple of my books. In fact, the weirdest experience for me with regard to this was maybe 3 years ago when my book Screwed came out, and they excerpted a chapter from it, or a piece of a chapter, and on the front cover it said "Get Screwed" by Thom Hartmann, and I was like, that was the cover of Hustler magazine. I made the cover, but it was very well received, and there was a lot of very positive feedback from middle class folks. So, they contacted us and said, can you revisit this Santa Claus thing? And Sam has been writing on this topic, and so we.
Yeah, and it's a good opportunity. I mean, as you talked about in the intro, alternative media here. I mean, at its core, we're trying to address a major problem with the middle class in America right now. And we need to get that message out to as many people as we can. Not just people who read the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or whatever, but also people who read Hustler magazine.
And if anything, that is what this magazine does. Here's actually a copy, if we could go ahead and zoom in on that. Here's a copy of the December issue, and as you can see right there, it says Who Shot Santa Claus. The article is right here in the center, along with a bunch of things that I just can't show you guys for the sake of this is a news program. But as you guys are saying, that it does reach a certain audience that you aren't going to get. And what I do know is also that this magazine and others makes it in the way to congressional offices. Do you think that they just throw it away, or do you hope that somebody will read your article?
I know for a fact that they don't throw it away. I used to work on the Hill for 2 years, and once a month the Hustler magazine would come, and I can remember one day when I was answering phones in the office and everything. I look at our pool of interns there, and they just have this magazine up, and they're looking at it. I'm like, snatch it out of there. And you guys can't be having that in congressional office.
You're supposed to say, just read the articles.
Yeah, or take it home. Let's not do that.
You can't guarantee that they're all able to look at the picture.
That magazine does go to every office. Larry Flynt makes sure to send it to every office on Capitol Hill, and there is a lot of relevant political information in it.
In every issue, actually.
Yeah.
And when you opened the segment, you were talking about the Democratic strategy and how the Republicans are trying to blow it up. It's really kind of the other way around. Democrats have been, historically, or certainly since FDR's election, Democrats have been providing not just what people wanted, but what people needed. The Democratic programs like Social Security, Medicare, the minimum wage, the right to unionize. These, what the Republicans refer to as gifts, these are the things that created the American middle class. One of the first and largest middle classes literally in the history of modern society. And the Republicans have been trying to take that down since the 30s. And they finally came up with a strategy in the mid-70s. In 76, Jude Wanniski came up with a strategy. And it got implemented in 1980 by the Reagan administration, and the Republicans have been playing that game ever since. And that's what the article's about.
So let's go ahead and toss to, I have a couple of sound bites for you guys that are from a couple of Republicans that spoke after the 2012 election about this so-called gifts program. And then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of your article and really what you were trying to deal with. If we can go ahead and roll those.
Conservatism, in my humble opinion, did not lose last night. It's just very difficult to beat Santa Claus. It is practically impossible to beat Santa Claus. People are not going to vote against Santa Claus.
There are 50% of the voting public who want stuff. They want things. And who is going to give them things? President Obama. He knows it, and he ran on it.
So here we are talking about, and they're talking about these things, this stuff that they're dealing with. Let's go ahead and break down this two Santa Claus theory that you broke down in Hustler magazine. Break it down for the average Joe for me.
Sure.
Well, it's funny that they're talking, that Rush Limbaugh specifically uses the word Santa Claus because, and in a way, that's a misnomer. I mean, we use that in the article because it's a good way to get across these ideas. But that's kind of belittling what Democrats have done since the Great Depression, really. And it's the same language that Jude Wanniski uses in 1976 when he writes this op-ed called The Two Santa Claus Theory, which basically asserts that Democrats have achieved political success because they're giving people things such as as Tom talked about, Social Security, unemployment insurance, later Medicare and everything like that. And if a party is running on these things, people tend to vote for them. So if Republicans are saying we can't afford them, we can't do that, they end up acting like the party of Scrooge, and nobody really wants to vote for the party of Scrooge. So Wanniski puts forward this idea that says, well, Republicans need to act like Santa Claus too, and the best way they can do that is by giving people tax cuts. Give people tax cuts. Never waver from that. Tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. And we've seen that as the strategy Republicans have carried forward ever since then, all the way to today with the fiscal cliff and everything.
Yeah. And it actually was a fair, for its time, it was the right suggestion if you're a Republican and you're trying to get power, because in the 70s, because of the very high inflation rates of the 70s, a lot of people who were middle class and paying very little in federal income taxes, as they started moving up it was called bracket creep at the time, and their taxes were going up because their pay was going up, although their purchasing power wasn't going up. So average middle class people were paying federal taxes that they hadn't been paying before. So when the Republicans became the tax cut Santa Clauses, it caught on. It wasn't just, hey, let's help out the rich guys, although it's become that. But then the second piece of it was, and this is where it was just masterful, and it was executed by the Reagan administration. If you look at the entire history of the United States and you inflation adjust the dollars from the George Washington administration, when we started with a deficit, we owed the French a lot of money to fight the Revolutionary War. From then until the Reagan administration, there were a few bumps for the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, World War I, and World War II. But basically, our deficit has always been in the neighborhood of about $1 trillion, current dollars. And in fact, you want to have a deficit. Alexander Hamilton, the first Treasury Secretary, wrote about this at some length, because you want to have something that's stable that people can invest in, where they can invest in their government, a safe place to invest. So when Reagan came along, they were like, okay, if we do the tax cut thing, then the deficit's going to go up. Now, how can that be a good thing? Because we're Republicans, we're not supposed to be in favor of the deficit going up. But, wait a minute, if the deficit goes up, if we can really drive the deficit up, then when the Democrats come into power, as they inevitably will, we can start yelling and screaming about the deficit and force them to cut back on these social programs. We can force them to shoot their own Santa Claus. And that's exactly what they did. Reagan took that $1 trillion deficit, it was about $800 billion when he came into office, and took it up to about $3 trillion by the time he left. And then George Herbert Walker Bush after him took it up to about $5 trillion. And then, of course, Bill Clinton brought in balanced budgets because for 8 years he had a Democrat in office, and so the Republicans were all screaming about the debt and the deficit, And then George W. Bush comes in and takes it, up to $10 trillion. I mean, just massively explodes it. And now, again, the Republicans are out yelling, time to shoot the Democratic Santa Claus.
Yeah, no, over the last 30 years, I mean, the vast majority of the debt has been Republicans. Roughly $10 trillion of the debt has been put on by Republican presidents. And that gets to what the clip that Rush Limbaugh was saying. You can't beat Santa Claus. And that's what Jude Wanniski was talking about. You can't beat Santa Claus. So he advised Republicans play their own Santa Claus, and he didn't explicitly talk about how, you know, if we run up this massive debt, then Democrats will eventually have to cut back. But that is how you end up beating Santa Claus, is you force Democrats to eventually shoot them. And that's what we're seeing played out here.
And I do have, we only have a short time left, but I do want to get to two quick things. First of all, you end your article by saying that it's time to put down the gun and not shoot Santa Claus. How can we do this responsibly?
Right. Well, the Republicans keep, historically, they did it with the Clinton administration, you know, ending welfare as we know it. They did it with the Obama administration last year, forcing Obama to cut unemployment benefits from 99 weeks down to 74 weeks as part of a compromise. Democrats have to stop saying, okay, we're going to go along with these cuts. This is crazy. We are a great nation. We're one of the wealthiest nations in the world. We can easily afford these kinds of social welfare programs, and more, frankly. I mean, our spending, our government spending as a percentage of GDP is about half of what it is in most of the other developed countries in the world. There's all kinds of room. It's just that, you know, you have to have the rich and the corporations pay their fair share. And that needs to be, you know, the Democrats need to stop saying, okay, we'll join you in shooting Santa Claus, or we will shoot Santa Claus, and instead say, no, we're going to stand up for working people.
And we're going to have to see how this all plays out with the fiscal cliff. We do know that that deadline is coming up.
Well, it's a giant shoot Santa Claus strategy.
That is absolutely, if your theories and if the theory of Jude Wanniski is right, then it's absolutely a shoot Santa Claus theory. Tom Hartman, host of The Big Picture, and Sam Sachs, Big Picture producer. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thanks, Megan.